What are you going to say if you have to give your side of the story to that investigation in Sweden?
We've been trying to do that for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
but 2.5 years.
Right.
In the courts here, they refused to permit us to say anything. Refused.
Okay, but what I'm saying is there are at least allegations. What do you have to say to those allegations?
Well, we're trying to do the formal method, which is to formally present them to the Swedish authorities. They've refused. They have even refused to accept a written, sworn statement.
People want to know if this is a setup or you were committing some irregularity, rape, sexual molestation, sexual whatever you want to call it.
Well, it is an abuse of language to use these words.
Right.
I mean, even before the Supreme Court here, there is an admission by the UK government, by the Swedish government, there's an admission that no woman went to a police station to complain about me, that this is something that the police decided to do. That is admitted. And unfortunately, in this sort of situation, when you're accused of these sorts of accusations...
No, you're not accused, at least you are...
When these sort of allegations are floating around in the media, you can't respond.
Why not?
Because it's like to wrestle with a pig. You get mud all over yourself, and it just suits the people who are throwing mud. That if you respond, you bring yourself into the situation. You legitimize the scurrilous accusations that have been made against you, and this sort of situation is. People care about women, they care about children, and they don't like to see bad things happen to them. So when you make such an accusation against someone, the instinct is to fight for the
victim,
for the alleged victim. That's the instinct. I have this instinct, but people can just go and see. I mean, it is on the internet. They can go and read the original police reports. They can see what various people said. And I defy anyone to read those and come away with an impression other than these women have been pushed, or it is a complete absurdity. Complete absurdity.
The Swedish government now is saying that if your life is at risk, if you could be submitted to the death penalty if they were extradited to the US, they will not do it. Do you believe that at any point you will be ready to consider to go to Sweden because you feel that there is a commitment, a written commitment that you're not going to be extradited?
At some point, yes. If the ground is right. I mean, if you look at what the Swedish were demanding, that is to immediately put me in prison and keep me there without charge. That's not really very acceptable either. So we have important work to do. That is wrong to do. If someone has been cooperative the whole time, has tried to... I stayed 5 weeks in Sweden to try and clear up that matter. I was given permission to leave. And then in the middle of Cablegate, they put out an Interpol red notice to the whole world. That's not right. For someone that is completely cooperative in trying to assist in investigation, it is not right to hold them in prison without charge.
And do you believe that the Sweden actions have in line with the US policies regarding unfriendly characters that you could be considered?
Sweden's a very interesting country. There's historically a lot of good things about Sweden. There's important advances of some kinds that were made in the 70s, but it's changed in a very sad way, and most Swedes actually, Swedes who are old enough, see what has happened, and they see the change, and they see a state that has said that it was proud of its neutrality. There's been questions about, even in the 70s, about actually how neutral it was, but to a position now where Sweden is on over 100 NATO committees, where its forces under US command in Afghanistan, where it was the fifth in to Libya with planes. It was the first to have its parliament to vote to send planes into Libya. Is the number one per capita arms manufacturer in the world. The number one arms manufacturer per capita in the world, nearly double that of Israel. It was the number one supplier of arms to the United States during the Iraq War, in absolute terms. And it is now currently the third largest supplier of arms to the United States in absolute terms. Our eighth largest arms manufacturer in the world in absolute terms. There we have this very strange situation where if you go to the Swedish Foreign Ministry website, there is a formal statement there that Sweden is a neutral country. And just last year, there was actually maybe just the beginning of this year, there was a combined operation with the United States and NATO in Sweden called Operation Loyal Arrow in relation to defeating some hypothetical Russian threat. In 2007, the US ambassador to Sweden, reporting back to Washington in a cable from Stockholm, said, and this is the title of the title of the cable: Sweden has consigned neutrality to the rubbish bin of history.
What is your opinion on what's going on in Syria?
WikiLeaks is in the process of releasing some 2.4 million emails from the Syrian government. So we have a somewhat of an insider's perspective, but it's obvious that the Western powers are using the Syrian issue in order to get rid of Syria or get rid of Syria's political opposition to the role of Israel, to weaken Iran, and that's clear. And it's clear that there's been a lot of enormous media manipulation of what has happened in Syria.
By the Western media?
Just extraordinary. I mean, photos appearing on the BBC website of a couple of hundred bodies laid out on the ground. Actually, it was from Iraq. It was from the butchery in Iraq, but saying that it was Syria. There's information we released through our Stratfor files, this American intelligence contractor, where they had meetings last year with people in the US military and also some from European militaries saying how they were looking forward to this campaign and military intervention, that they already had special ops forces on the ground in Syria. Many people in Lebanon have campaigned for the liberation of Syrian people. So under Assad, there is a one-party state. There's a one-party Ba'ath state. The government cannot be comprised of a party other than the Ba'ath party, or at least it couldn't be until recent constitutional change in the past few months. Those constitutional changes are being introduced. So there is in response to this threat by the people domestically and the international threat, there is a democratization that is occurring in Syria. It's clear that the US, the UK, Israel, France, is not at all concerned about the democratization. I mean, where's the campaign to democratize Saudi Arabia? Where's the campaign to democratize Bahrain? Countries which are where to be an opposition activist is significantly more precarious. In fact, a friend of mine has just been sentenced to 3 years in Bahrain, in prison for going to a protest and sending a tweet. It is a targeted maneuver for geopolitical reasons. Now, the consequence of a war with Syria is so severe that is something that should be resisted. The military intervention must be pulled back. It must be. Because if there is a proper military war in Syria, we're talking, there were 20 to 40,000 dead in Libya. We're talking 100,000 people, perhaps, killed in a civil war. And with a political outcome that is still unpredictable. So we don't know that we're going to see a much better government after this. We may see a much worse government.
Talking about the merits of WikiLeaks and its contribution to the defense of human rights and investigative journalism, Fidel Narváez, who is the consul of Ecuador here in London, he wrote, "To ignore these merits can only come from antagonism and is clear from the opinion of the director of the NGO Fundamedios in Ecuador when he says," this gentleman, his name is César Ricaurte, "WikiLeaks does not practice journalism, only leaks, and it's truly absurd to want to say that the work of Assange is a model of investigative journalism." And he, meaning Mr. Narváez, continues saying, "Paradoxically, Fundamedios and its director participated in Ecuador with great enthusiasm at the Latin American Conference of Investigative Journalism 2011, where the keynote speaker was precisely one of the WikiLeaks spokesmen who was invited to give a seminar to dozens of the most experienced journalists in the continent." So are you just a machine of leaking cables or information, or you are practicing investigative journalism and the process of between you receive information and you pass it along goes through different stages?
WikiLeaks is a publication. It's the name of a publication. Behind the publication there is an organization. The organization is Sunshine Press. So we do everything that a big media organization does. So that means we have to get information, create the infrastructure to do that, defend ourselves legally, defend ourselves financially, defend ourselves politically, train our staff, make sure they're in safe locations and so on. And as part of the political defense, we campaigned for the rights of sources, the rights of journalists, and the rights to publish. This particular word, journalist, has never had such power as in relation to the assault on WikiLeaks. The concern as to the definition of this word. Now, when a cameraman goes to war and he photographs something and comes back, we all acknowledge that he is a war journalist. Even though he's not writing an opinion piece. For the material that we publish the truth always. There's never been an accusation that a single thing that we've published over 5 years has not been true. We verify what is published, we analyze what is published, but our analysis, yes, is sometimes like classical newswire analysis. This happened, this date, etc., in a narrative form. But this is the internet. We're dealing with, last year we've published over 1 million documents from different places. It is simply not physically possible to write individual news stories about 1 million documents. That is not possible. We work at a higher level, which is that we create the structure of analysis. So that is, after all verification publication is done, to, for example, with the Afghan war logs, to show exactly where on maps people were killed, how many by the size of the circle on a map and so on. That's the only way to do things at scale. And the world's a big place, and if you really want to change the world, you have to do things at the same scale as the problem. The US involvement in Afghanistan, the State Department, the Syrian government, these are big organizations. These organizations have to be understood by understanding there are many millions of pieces all at once. And that's what we do. I don't care whether people call this journalism or not. It's completely irrelevant. This is more important than that. That it is about adding to our shared intellectual record, documenting what is actually going on, producing just change as a result of that documentation.
For the record, do you buy information? Do you sell information?
We haven't bought or sold any information, but I have no philosophical objection against that. It is just for legal and political reasons or just logistics we haven't. But I understand other people do occasionally, and I have no objection against that. But why should only journalists and lawyers be paid? The people who actually take the real risks, they're the sources of information. And I think they should be compensated for the risks.
When the US is saying that you were putting the lives of many people at risk because of the releasing of all those 250,000 cables, do you admit that?
This is a basic rhetorical trick. So they didn't say, or they said that for every publication that we've done about the US, actually. They've tried some variant on that. But this first started when we produced the Afghan war logs. We did an analysis that showed that just in those records that the US government had were documented individual cases of 20,000 people being killed in Afghanistan.
Civilians?
Mostly civilians, vast majority civilians. 20,000. And so not all of them killed by the US military, many killed by the Taliban, but killed by the situation that the US military had brought to Afghanistan. So what is the accusation? The accusation is the US military here has directly killed several thousand people and indirectly killed 20,000 people according to its own records, and here's every single record showing the children that were killed, the adults, the women, etc. And we published it. So our accusation is they not merely have blood on their hands, they are a machine to put blood all over Afghanistan.
The US?
The US. The US military was putting blood all over Afghanistan, the blood of children, the blood of women, the blood of men, and the blood of its own soldiers, all over Afghanistan. That was our accusation. So if that is the accusation of your opponent, how do you try and turn that around? You just say the same thing back. I mean, it's like primary school. So they say, WikiLeaks says Pentagon killed thousands of people. Pentagon says WikiLeaks might have blood on its hands. And what is astounding is that over the past 2.5 years, there has been no claim by the American government or any other government that we have killed or responsible for the death of a single person, a single actual person.
So you were directly or indirectly didn't kill with
exactly.
your information
exactly.
anyone.
That no person, there is no allegation that any person was harmed physically from our publication, from all our extraordinary publications. Not a single. They haven't been able to bring up a single person, just like they weren't able to find weapons of mass destruction around.
So when Sarah Palin says that you have blood in your hands,
she's lying. She is lying. But if you Google for the phrase "blood on hands" and WikiLeaks, you get something like 700,000 results. If you Google for that same phrase in relation to the Pentagon only, not speaking about WikiLeaks, you get about 70,000 results. So all the wars, because of the corruption in the media, 10 times as many articles have been produced saying that WikiLeaks has blood on its hands, where not a single person has been harmed, even according to the US government, compared to all the wars the US has ever fought, over 150,000 deaths in Iraq, over 20,000 deaths in Afghanistan, documented. And yet, the perception, if you read the rest of the media, the statistically measured perception is that WikiLeaks has killed 10 times as many people as the Pentagon.
So, if I'm understanding you well, you say the US government has never ever question the veracity of your information.
That's right.
So your biggest sin for some of the people in the US has been to dare to bring the truth, to bring transparency, to bring the information that the general population hasn't had access to, and therefore they're going to punish you, or they're punishing you, they're haunting you, they're in a witch hunt, and basically the message is, you better don't deal with us, and nobody else try to follow your steps, because that is going to happen to Julian Assange, and that is going to could happen to you too.
They say that explicitly. They have said that in official documents. They have said explicitly that it is not just about prosecuting Julian Assange for espionage. It's about stopping WikiLeaks' ongoing activities.